All right, Kevin Owocki of Gitcoin, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So your most relatively recent big picture news is that you guys spun out of consensus and went independent. You've also been progressively decentralizing. What does that really mean? What does it involve? What have been the challenges of that road?
Sure. Well, I'm super thankful to Joe and Consensus for incubating Gitcoin, and we are now an independent company with a board of directors, and we are working on building up the DAO. So basically the DAO is going to be, I think, the entity long-term that's going to house our governance, and then also the computation of the network and the development of the software for the network is something that could be orchestrated through the DAO long-term. And so it's just a kind of a multi-layer cake of governance, computation, development, and maybe eventually one day economics will be run through the DAO.
I mean, why a DAO for this? What have you discovered through running a DAO that maybe you thought was going to be an advantage, but it's been a disadvantage, or vice versa?
Sure. Well, Gitcoin's a place that you can get coins if you're a software engineer, and a lot of our customers are DAOs. And I've been thinking, basically, if we're going to be selling software to DAOs, then we should be a DAO ourselves. After all, Henry Ford is famous for having his employees and customers all drive cars, not take horses to the office. And so I think that it's important that we are living the DAO world, and we're learning how to run a DAO ourselves. And building coordination software for DAOs is our deep reason for being, and our impact on the space is creating more coordination. So just kind of eating our own dog food is what we're doing.
And you guys are in the middle of a big grant round right now. You've got almost $1 million, I think, in matching grants lined up. Looking through some of those projects, you've got maybe people using their tokens to vote on what they want to fund. There's maybe 5,000 here, 10,000 here, and you're giving matching funds towards that. Is that enough for a project to really get off the ground if it's small?
Especially when we see news today of some project that hasn't even done that much yet raises $200 million from VCs.
Sure.
So we're talking about, can the DAO route really end up competing with the traditional VC route?
Yeah, that's a good question. Gitcoin Grants is one of the products that we're most famous for, and it's basically a matching round that we run every quarter. This most recent quarter, we're giving out $1 million worth of matching to the projects that get the most breadth of contributions to them. So as opposed to what the whales are funding, the poor and the many choose what projects get the matching pool in Gitcoin, not the rich and the few. And that's really important, especially for establishing a floor for these projects where they can get tokens. Uniswap, Yearn Finance, 1inch Exchange, all of these brand names today are Gitcoin Grants alumni from the last bear market. And we really want to be the pilot light for the ecosystem that gets the ecosystem through rough times. And so it's about establishing a floor. I don't know that we'll ever compete with VCs and be giving hundreds of millions of dollars out, although arguably open source software creates billions of dollars in economic value for the world, and there's just no business model for it. I hope that one day we'll be able to get there, but we're just not quite there yet.
So Decrypt is starting its own DAO, and we're just starting that process. I wondered if you had some advice for us as we move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I'm a big iteration person, and so for us, it's about having feedback cycles on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis where the whole community can kind of iterate towards whatever their North Star is together. With Gitcoin, our North Star is to fund open source and to make sure that software developers one day will be able to quit their corporate jobs and work for the open internet. And so there's a series of weekly community calls, monthly planning sessions, and quarterly grants rounds that help us reach that North Star. And I just think that the future is undiscovered, and iteration is a way of creating a feedback cycle to explore a design space.
And if we drill down, Kevin, with the kind of promise of DAOs, a lot of people out there, and you talk about all the different voting rights and the appeal of the decentralized governance, but a lot of people out there saying, this is the future of companies. And that's not quite clear yet, right? I mean, in some cases, depending on the project, it doesn't make sense to have equal voting rights among everyone. With some projects, maybe some people do know more than others and should be kind of the decision makers. And it kind of seems like we're witnessing these nuances get ironed out live in real time, right? I mean, everyone in the space now is like, well, I'm in 30 different DAOs, and well, there's no way that you're giving all of them your equal time, and that you can be giving all of them everything that you have to give. I mean, are these challenges that you're already seeing, and how do you think that those are going to play out?
Yeah, well, I think that the word DAO, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, is sort of a misnomer. And what I really think about these is that an LLC is basically an organization that's domiciled in a certain country, and disputes are very costly because you have to take someone to court, and that could take months and millions of dollars, actually years and millions of dollars. And smart contracts are great because they're global in jurisdiction, and the dispute cost is really just the gas fee on the Ethereum network. And so you can participate for anywhere, and you can educate disputes better. So we're really just talking about digital organizations, I think, is the design space here. And if you want to see how people are using DAOs, Gitcoin and Bankless DAO actually just recently released a report that had a whole bunch of demographic information about what tools people are using in DAOs. And so, the engineer in me likes to stay as data-based as possible. And so you can check that out at bit.ly/DAO creator report. We've got some stats on how people are using DAOs these days. And you're right that it's just exploring the design space, I think, at this point.
Yeah, it starts to look like the next maybe cottage industry, or at least subset of protocols, tools, companies, is going to be things that exist just to service the multiple DAO world, because it's getting overwhelming. I mean, as JB mentioned, we have our own media DAO we're working on, and even being able to split your time with that and give that all the time it deserves. And some of the people in that DAO are in 20 other DAOs. Yeah. I mean, we're going to need kind of cross-DAO tools, or at least organizational tools that people can use to make this more efficient. Yeah,
one of the things we saw in the DAO Creator Report is that most people can't meaningfully work in more than 2 or 3 DAOs. And so a common pattern is that people have their main squeeze, the DAO that they spend 80% of their time on, and then 20% of their time they'll dabble in 2 or 3 other DAOs. And so I think that that's healthy and good, and I'm excited about the cross-pollination that's going to happen from that. But another thing that we're starting to see at Gitcoin is that our mission is to fund open source software. And we're starting to see other organizations that really care about that mission also create a common space in which creators in Gitcoin DAO and creators in ENS, creators in Radical can all have this common space where we're all working towards a similar mission. And it's not about which DAO you're working for. You're really in a mesh network of DAOs that's supporting a cause together. And so I think that maybe the future is not so I work for X DAO or Y DAO. In a company you work for X company or Y company. But I work for this mission and I'm supported by these DAOs.
Of course, the business reporter in me would retort that some people say, well, depending on what it is you're building, it can't always be, we're all in this together. Sometimes it's, well, that other thing is my competitor and they're trying to build something similar and I want to beat them and have mine be more successful.
Yeah, so that's true. Yeah. I'm the Colorado guy and you can be the New York guy. That's fine. But I do think that there is a basis for, if these projects that have similar missions with each other were all to do token swaps, say hypothetically, there would be a rational economic reason for you to not want to elbow them out, but to kind of be a little bit more Colorado kumbaya about how you go about your business. And that's the world that I see and that I'm working for. But we'll see. Maybe invite me back at Mainnet 2024 and we'll see who wins.
Nice. Any final burning question?
Well, just one last thing. We've heard a lot of talk this week about multi-chains and multi-chain future. And Gitcoin is Ethereum based. Do you see Gitcoin branching out into a multi-chain future?
Yeah. Well, Gitcoin isn't just Ethereum based. Gitcoin is based. So I'm just trying to learn to talk like the Gen Z people, I think. Our mission, our organizing principle is to grow open source and create economic incentives for open source software. And I love Ethereum. It's great. It's based, as they say. And but our mission, our North Star, is open source software. And so regardless of whether the future is Ethereum, Bitcoin, multi-chain, then it's really about making sure the individuals, the open source software developers out there are the ones that are getting paid. And so Ethereum is where we started, and we love Joe and Vitalik for giving us our start, but the mission can be supported by multiple chains. And I do see a world probably in which there are multiple chains that are interoperable with each other. When you send a packet across the internet, you don't really get maximalist about which router it goes through. It just happens behind the scenes. And because it's so easy to do, you don't really have to think about it. And it's probably going to be that way with the Internet of Value come 5 or 10 years. But I do love Ethereum. The network effects that it's started and the culture that it's created is really important.
All right. Kevin Owocki of Gitcoin, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.